Remember when the internet first came out and they said that all this information is going to be available, it will bring knowledge to the world, and people will be better informed than ever before. Well, didn't that just work out perfectly? I mean, technically. In this video, we're going to explore the reasons why cults are surging in the digital age. Plus, is there anything we can do about it? Note, it's kind of a feature, not a bug, so we'll get to it though. Cults are high control social groups, usually led by a charismatic leader that exerts undue influence over his subjects. For Gen Z, I'll translate that for you. It's, bruh, the followers like simp for the leader, yo. I love my Gen Z, but they're illiterate. We are in the age of me. You would think that people would be less likely to follow random people than any other time before, but that just hasn't panned out, has it? People are more exposed to these high control groups. They are joining more than ever, but why is that? I'm going to go over a few of the reasons here. I can't list them all, but I'm going to go over the three main ones that I think are really important. First and foremost, people are seekers. Remember we did that video on who joins a cult? Well, people who join cults tend to be seekers. Oftentimes they're going through a very painful transition period, like a breakup, a death in the family, etc. They're missing out on something in their lives, and they think that they can solve it through this secret knowledge that the cult provides. These cults say that they are following the truth and that they have the whole truth, that their doctrine is revolutionary and it will cure whatever ails you. That's what they say. That's their pitch. The time was you would go to the church for that information, the information about nature and about how the world really works, but that's not the case anymore. God has been dead for a long, long time, going on centuries now. Church attendance is declining. Our institutions have been revealed to be hollow, unfortunately. The family is declining. That includes marriage and children. People are just lonelier and more lost than ever. The modern age has more information, but it has less truth. And no, what our ancestors were told in church was not necessarily the absolute truth, but they believed that it was. And that belief alone was strong. It was strong enough for them at the time. Someone online described Christianity as psychotech, and I thought that that was just brilliant because that's exactly what it is. We need something to believe in. We really do. That determined belief, that thing that the person really, really, truly believes in, even if it's false, it can help them a lot in the real world. So that false truth actually leads to greater truth in their lives, if that makes any sense, especially when you have a religion that's complementary to the culture. So if you're, for example, in the United States and you're Christian, bam, perfect. Actually helps quite a lot. But we see, and I don't even have to explain it to you, you already know that people do want a community. They do want to have meaning in their lives, and our culture just doesn't provide that for them. That's a sad truth, but it just doesn't. And so many people become seekers because of this. They understand something really important is missing in their lives. They seek for a deeper meaning. And of course, they'll find someone who promises that they could give it to them just for this small fee, just for this little bit of time. Remember Twin Flames Universe? They promised to give people a spouse. 12 tribes promised biblical authenticity. These cults, they promise enlightenment, they promise salvation, they promise everything. And people look around at their lives and they work these soulless corporate jobs. When they call in for help somewhere, they get a machine. Their love lives aren't what they thought they would be. And many of them don't have families. And if they do have families, the extended family is far away. It's the trend, trends in our culture right now. We weren't actually meant to live like this. We're treading new ground, and some of it's not that great. And these people understand that. But they think that the problem can be solved through a guru, and the guru really can't solve it. All the guru can do is point out what you already know is wrong and reinforce your doubts. So you think he's telling you a truth, and then he offers his own panacea, the snake oil. I'm actually shocked that everyone isn't in a cult. In fact, of the things to look for meaning, a cult isn't necessarily the worst. Most people don't end up drinking the Kool-Aid, by the way. They just sort of dip in and dip out. It's got higher survival rates than a heroin addiction, so that's good. Cults are better than heroin for the most part. Is it fair to compare online cults to fentanyl if we're going to compare traditional cults to heroin? Anyway, people are seeking meaning. That's all I'm saying. Let's move away from this tangent. Now, up next is the concept of the cultic milieu. It's sort of the zeitgeist, but for new religious movements, which, due to social media and technology in general, communications technology in general, has become the general zeitgeist. Cultic milieu is a term originally coined by this man called Colin Campbell in his 1972 book, The Cult, The Cultic Milieu, and Secularization. Milieu. Now that is a word. You bust that out with your cousin with the word a day calendar, and you look like the cool one. Looks like you got the word a day calendar. Campbell defined the cultic milieu as the cultural underground of ideas and beliefs that lie outside of mainstream culture, mainstream society. It's a kind of counterculture, and people are willing to entertain new, breaking, heterodox ideas, and they don't trust authority. It's kind of a breeding ground for cults and new religious movements. Now, Campbell says that the more secular a society becomes, the more open it becomes to new cults and new religious movements that cater to these unmet needs, because these individuals are seeking meaning. This is what our godless age hath wrought. Dramatic, so dramatic. Now, there are different cultic milieus for different subcultures. We are all probably familiar with the New Age cultic milieu. Concepts that float around are things like reincarnation, karma, spirit guides, and manifestation. We discuss this a lot on this channel. We go into it. And now, because everybody knows about that cultic, this New Age cultic milieu has kind of spread out across and into the mainstream. Oprah did a lot to bring the New Age cultic milieu to the public, but nothing can top the internet. She was a precursor for the internet, and now it's everywhere. It's in everybody's pocket. The cultic milieu is so common now. Before, you had to go downtown, you had to go speak to the guy on the corner who sells the incense, and that's how you got your cult lore. Now, you get it on your phone. It's so much easier. You don't have to put in any of the work. The normies have access to the most far out there ideas that there ever were, and it doesn't really work for everybody. Normally, it is all fun and games, but sometimes it goes too far. We're living in an age where it may have gone just a little bit too far. And we see the result of the cultic milieu making its way into the mainstream. I just did a video on the law of attraction with which Oprah publicized, and that kind of trickled down into toxic positivity, and people in that world, they bounce ideas off of each other until you get like a Teal Swan or a Mother God. So Teal Swan and Mother God didn't come from Oprah, but they did come from the New Age cultic milieu. Now, we see how this can get really serious over the past 10 years of politics. The culmination of that came last week when Bernie Sanders was asking Robert Kennedy Jr. about some anti-vax onesies that his former organization was selling. Bernie was shocked. Bernie was completely shocked about these onesies. And that's because Bernie isn't online enough. But I recognize these onesies for what they were. They're slogans for the political cultic milieu, this kind of health segment of the political cultic milieu. These things, they're fine on Twitter, they're fine on Reddit or whatever, but we really don't expect it to happen in Congress. These are worlds colliding here. Worlds colliding, Jerry. I don't want to explain that reference. Now, these things are all well and good on Twitter, but we really don't expect to see it in Congress. But that's where it is now. That cultic milieu is just general mainstream information, and that's something we really have to watch out for. There being no line between the mainstream and the counterculture is actually a problem, and I blame the institutions for failing to uphold the strictest standards of logical thinking. We've seen this in the past 10, 15 years. They legitimately have failed us, and that was obvious under COVID. A lot of people just broke. People started distrusting authority more, and for good reason, and now very few people actually do trust the authorities. Nevertheless, I don't think that there's anything anyone could have really done to prevent the cultic milieu from going mainstream in this age of social media. The institution's failure just sped the process along, but it's almost inevitable that this cultic milieu would engulf mainstream society, just the way that information spreads. They tried censorship. They really did try censorship, but that didn't work. It's just the consequences of this unfettered access to information. Some of that information really is not helpful. And we can go into spiritual psychosis later, but sometimes too much information can really mess a person up. Now, the last point I wanted to touch on as to why cults are blooming in this digital age is that there are new digital frontiers. new frontiers. There's no man's land. There are no rulers. When there are frontiers, there are no rulers. And frontiers create a power vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. Some person will come up and they will grab power. People tend to naturally form these hierarchies anyway. It happens in settled land too, but in settled land, there are rules. There are standards, there's etiquette. Oftentimes people are born into power. They're born into powerful families or positions, and they're raised to take that on. So in a way, it's actually good that there are these new frontiers where new people can come up. On the frontier, it's really anything goes. I really wonder if that's why California has always been this sort of mystical place where people come to get their gold, to dig their gold, like, in a metaphorical way. They come to join cults as well. It's kind of the last frontier of our country, last physical frontier. And it's kept that status until relatively recently. Regardless, the internet is the latest unsettled land. Anyone can make a name for themselves. In television and in movies, that's kind of closed off to most people. You have to have the right connections. You have to have a lot of talent. You have to have the right connections. And you got to be really lucky. But anyone with the gift of gab can just come on social media and make a channel, and maybe that will get picked up. So social media is just opening up this vast new frontier where all kinds of new people are going to be coming in. I do not fault influencers for going as far as their talent will allow. Absolutely not. But keep in mind, influencers have even less wisdom than the establishment press, and the establishment press has very little wisdom. Very little. Here we are. And we had these proto-influencers in the 20th century, and that did not turn out well. I'm going to do some videos this year on that, but we've seen this before, and it's just kind of going faster and faster and faster because of our technology. I don't know how the 21st century influencers 2.0 is really going to work out. But we think that, history ended then and no more is going on, but actually we're living in history. We're living in our children's history. So this could go anyway. We just got to observe. It didn't really work out very well in the 20th century. I'm just going to say that, and I will make videos, but it was not a good thing in the 20th century. It's not enough to just say the right thing. You have to be able to take the right action, and that's a lot of the reasons why politicians fail, because they'll say the right thing, but they have no idea what to do, and they don't have the means to do it. That's all I will say about the influencers. So that's all well and good, but what can we really do about it? It's kind of the way that groups form naturally, so we're a bit of a pickle. Now, some cult leaders, they will defend themselves by saying, it's not a cult, it's culture. Like that makes it any better. Remember Nature Boy used to say that? A good spiritual teacher, a real spiritual teacher, will try to be better than the culture. And that's not actually that hard considering the way the culture is. Humans naturally follow the leader. It's hardwired. Unfortunately, it's hardwired. So leaders emerge, and so do followers based on the circumstances and their personality types. False exploitative leaders take advantage of this, and they use their knowledge of human psychology to manipulate their followers. And they all seem to do it under this very similar game plan that we have been studying on this channel. Good, honest leaders will not do that. And there are good, honest leaders out there. Just because a person is a leader doesn't mean that they're a cult leader. But the best way to keep cult leaders from emerging is to nurture your children better. Remember, we did that entire video on the traumatic narcissist theory, where basically they were victimized and they grew up to victimize others. But we can't raise other people's children, can we? And so we're going to have to deal with the children of not so great parents. And some people actually do have decent childhoods. They have good parents, and they still become demagogues. Hitler is an example. His mother supposedly was actually a very good mom, and look what happened there. Bad things. Now, the next way to prevent cults from forming in a digital age is to teach young people about the dangers of social media and about cult formation, about human behavior. We've been able to effectively stop a lot of really damaging behaviors that people just used to think were par for the course. They were totally normal. Slavery, for example. We don't do that anymore for the most part. We don't publicly execute people anymore. We don't attack homosexuals for the most part. We don't marry our cousins. We don't beat our wives and our children. Most people don't do this. And most men don't rape. Most of them do not. We have come a long, long way in disciplining our animal nature. And it's a good guess. It's a good guess that we might be able to curb some of this cult formation as well, just with enough education and self-discipline. I don't think that it will permanently prevent cult formation, nor would you actually want to do that, but it might be able to prevent the most egregious cases from happening again. So basically, to sum it all up, why are cults forming so quickly in this digital age? One, people are seekers, because we're in a very secular society. Two, the cultic milieu has become mainstream. And three, the internet provides a new frontier to be settled. It's going to be settled by somebody. There you go. If you liked this video, definitely check out my video on who joins a cult. Also check out my video on who becomes a cult leader. I'll link both of those at the bottom. Thank you.